Hello all and welcome. I am the Practical Philosopher. And in this video I would like to discuss a controversial figure in 20th century philosophy. And that would be a woman by the name of Ayn Rand. Now, while a great many people followed her teachings, there were some people who were very critical of some of what she taught. And while they believed some of her teachings, some of them flew in the way of their indoctrinated worldview. Some of these people didn't fully grasp what she taught, and some failed to look deeply enough into what she taught to fully understand exactly what she was trying to say. Now, what am I talking about specifically? I am talking about Ayn Rand's teachings on the subject of altruism. This subject is very controversial, and to this day, many people like to talk about Ayn Rand as if she was quaint, interesting philosopher who had some valid teachings, but you can't believe what she said in regards to altruism. Some of what she taught, it was just goofy stuff. She taught that people should be greedy, and they should be selfish, and they shouldn't give charity, and they should just worry about themselves and not their fellow man, and just be this uncaring, heartless brute of a person who doesn't really worry about the rest of the world. They'll talk about her in terms like this as if, first of all, one lesson defines the teacher, as if somebody gets one thing wrong, then, their whole entire life's work is invalid, which is nonsense, of course. But they're totally wrong in their interpretation of her work. And this is why I'm making this video, to clear up what Ayn Rand's teachings on altruism actually meant. Because this particular lesson that she taught, so many people get caught up on it. And in some ways it is the crux of her philosophy in terms of the lessons that she taught. Because in truth, her philosophy, objectivism, is at its heart just about viewing the world objectively. And the lessons that she's taught us, she gained by viewing the world through the lens of the objective self. And this is where some people tend to diverge, to disagree with her, but many of them have misunderstood what she had to say about altruism. And I would like to clear that up here and now. Now, first of all, let us define our terms. What is altruism? Well, simply put, altruism is a want, a need, a desire, and an action that involves helping other people. You have a need, you have a desire, a want to give, to aid people in need, to help those that need your help. And this is an aspect of empathy. Now, of course, we all know empathy isn't necessarily a bad thing. I say necessarily because most people don't stop and question whether or not it's good or bad. They automatically assume empathy good, non-empathy bad, which is, of course, nonsense. The world is not one of absolutes in that regard. And there is good empathy, and then there is unfocused, non-judgmental empathy. Altruism. And altruism that is unfocused in its application is evil and bad, while judicious altruism can be a force for good in the world. Now, first of all, we need to go further in defining our terms, because there's not just one type of altruism. There are two. There is altruism by choice, and there is altruism where you have no choice, meaning coerced altruism and uncoerced altruism. Now, what is coerced altruism? Well, let's put it very simply. Coerced altruism is when somebody makes you give stuff to other people. These people need some stuff. You have more than you need. You should give them some stuff. I don't want to give them stuff. Well, I got a gun. So you must. That's about as easy as coercion gets. So coerced altruism is, simply put, you make other people give other people their stuff. Now, altruism by choice is pretty simple to understand. You choose to help other people. Now, this is judicious altruism. Judicious altruism is when you pick and choose who you want to help. Now, this type of altruism existed in the 19th and early 20th century. And that is the type of altruism I want to talk about first, is judicious altruism. Now, judicious altruism involves people who need help and people choosing to give them help. In truth, altruism is about people who need help, yes, but it is about you choosing whether or not to give it. Do they choose to do so or do they not? If, for example, you, through no fault of your own, get into trouble, you need help, you have an accident at work, you get into trouble, you lose your job, there's layoffs, the economy goes bad, what have you, what do? Well, clearly those are things that you have no control over, and you've done nothing wrong, so through no fault of your own, you've ended up in a situation where you need help. Now, in that situation, does that person deserve some type of help? And the answer would be yes. Now, where do they get that help? Now, the funny thing is that, as I said, back in the 19th and early 20th century, judicious altruism existed. And it existed in the form of mutual aid societies. Now, you might have heard this word before, but you've probably, like most modern Americans, never studied the history of such organizations. Or you might not even know what they were. And the truth is that before welfare state, the New Deal, you had in America mutual aid societies all over the place that existed to take the place of what we have today, which is a welfare state. Now, these mutual aid societies operated either in small communities or as international groups. And some of the largest had more than 1 million members. And the way they existed was that the people in a community or, who wanted to join one of these large mutual aid societies that existed throughout the country, they would become members, and they might pay an entry fee or a small membership fee, very small, I might add, and in that, they would contribute to the greater whole. And when someone got in trouble, when someone was hurt, when someone lost their job or was in dire need of help, these mutual aid societies would get together and on an individual basis judge whether or not the person was deserving of their help. And if they were, they would help them. They would help them either with, and oftentimes there would be help with child care if the person was injured and couldn't care for their kids, in the form of money sometimes if they needed money for food or rent, or there were even instances where they would give small loans to help people start businesses. I mean, these mutual aid societies existed literally to aid the communities they existed in. But they didn't exist to help those communities in an unfocused way. So that is one form of uncoerced, judicious altruism. Now, on the opposite side of the coin, what you have is the modern welfare state. Now, these mutual aid societies started to disappear when the 1930s came about because of the welfare state. With all of the new welfare programs that started to be instituted, these mutual aid societies lost all their members. People stopped paying dues because, hey, it's not a lot of money I'm paying, but the government's offering me all this free stuff. I don't have to pay anything. All of a sudden, this judicious, focused implementation of altruism disappeared. In place of your fellow man helping you directly, you have everyone in the whole country giving a big percentage of their paycheck to the government, who then redistributes your wealth. to anyone and everyone that needs help. It didn't matter if that person was deserving of help. Oh, you quit your job. Ah, well, oh, you're an alcoholic. Oh, you're a drug addict. Oh, well, we'll help you anyway. Where before, these people would not have gotten help. Now, they're getting help, and a lot of help. And this is one of the problems with using injudicious altruism, is that it's a waste of resources. It's a waste of resources. Oh, and you might say, oh, that sounds so horrible. You're talking about people like their things, like their gasoline or oil. No, I'm not. And they're just, no, I'm talking about things in logical, reasonable ways. And I'm talking about the resources that are being distributed to people in a very unfair way. And you people who love altruism, love to talk about fairness, that would be leftists in general, and how unfair, how wrong, how morally wrong is it to give money to people who are in a situation through their own damn fault. You end up homeless because of, oh, I'm a drug addict, oh, I'm an alcoholic, oh, I made some bad choices. You don't deserve to get help. Now the funny thing is that if you go back to the 19th century, very early 20th century, homelessness was not a big problem. You had homeless people, but it was a very small percentage of the population. If you were to compare the homelessness of the early 20th century and the 19th century to what we have today in, say, America, for example, there's no comparison. It's orders of magnitude greater now than it was 100 years ago. Why is that? Did something change? Did people get less prosperous? Did people become bigger losers? We developed ever greater ways to improve ourselves and our society? That makes no logical sense. Of course, that's not the case. What happened was that people used judicious altruism back then. They took care of their fellow man, but not without logic and reason. They chose who they would help and who would not be helped. And in that way, the resources that there were, and by the way, these resources were far less than is allocated to the government, because the government wastes those resources indiscriminately on everyone as compared to focusing them in on just those people that are wanting and deserving of help. And that's the problem. The people who need and are most deserving are the people in society who are the most productive individuals. The people who worked their whole life and through no fault of their own had an accident or got laid off. And these are the people that you want to help, that you want to support, because these are the people that make and create your society and make it grow. They're the ones that have the skills. They're the ones that have the chutzpah. They're the ones that have the drive to produce and go out there and work. While you have other people who are, for lack of a better term, parasites, who feel that because I exist, I breathe, I eat, I crap, that you should give me stuff. And those people have always existed in society. But until the mid to late 20th century, they existed on the fringes because they had no hosts to feed off of. Parasites only thrive in an environment where they can feed. Otherwise, they die off. Of course, they don't die off completely because there's always suckers out there who will help someone with a sob story. But they do not exist in large enough numbers, generally speaking, when you have judicious altruism to imperil the society, let alone to become a majority, a large enough group to have a voice. Oh, no, no, no. But if you have unrestrained altruism, anybody can put their hand into a cookie jar if they claim that they need help, then suddenly the number of parasites will explode and grow. And people who formerly would never have been parasites suddenly see an easier way, and then they become parasites. You see, it's all about incentivization. If you incentivize people to act in a particular way, they will act in that way. You know, it's interesting. If you think about a dog for a moment, of course, people are not dogs, but it's interesting to look at something like a dog because it exemplifies the most simple way that life forms respond to their environment. If you kick a dog, he's not coming back. If you feed a dog, he's going to come back again and again and again because you have now incentivized him to come back. That's how the world works. And no matter how intelligent we might become, the truth is, if you give us free stuff, the majority of people are just going to keep coming back for more. And that makes them into parasites. Now, back to the mutual aid societies of the 19th and early 20th century. These societies did not create a welfare state where you could live indefinitely off of the state. No. They would give you limited aid until you were back on your feet. You couldn't just sit there all day and watch Oprah. Not that there was Oprah back then, but whatever the equivalent would be. Listen to your phonograph all day of whatever popular jazz music was in vogue at that time. Whatever. You couldn't sit around all day and read and listen to the phonograph and do nothing. Because they'd cut you off. They would cut you off. And that'd be it. Nowadays, you got people that aren't even American citizens. They just come in, squat down, and they get free stuff. So, of course, they're incentivized to come in, and more incentivized to come in, and more parasites are created. They come in, and, of course, so that's how it works. Incentive. If you give people unrestrained access to free stuff, a large number of them are going to take advantage of it. And you cannot say, oh, well, you know, geez, give people help until they don't need it, but we're not going to monitor. You know, and we're just going to give it endlessly. Yeah, we're not going to monitor whether or not they're just sitting around doing nothing to improve their situation. Now, the old mutual aid societies, they had representatives that lived in those communities, and the people in those communities that belonged to those societies, they would let them know, hey, this guy isn't doing the stuff he's supposed to be doing. Oh, well, we're going to take away his aid. He gets no more aid. So you were incentivized to get off your ass and go out and find a job. And generally, the people they helped were people who had ended up in that situation through no fault of their own. So these were people who had a very, very strong inclination to support themselves. And there was a big stigma in the past to not working. Big stigma. People had pride in their work. They took pride in being a hard-working person who provided for their family. Because so few people were able to game the system. Because there was no system. There was no welfare state. You just had your fellow man. And it worked. It worked great. And this was a uncoerced form of charity. And it existed in all parts of the country. And these mutual aid societies took care of everything from health care to unemployment to loans for small businesses. They covered all aspects of a person's needs in life. And in return, you simply paid a small membership fee, probably a yearly fee. It was a very small amount of money. We're not talking a lot. We're not talking anything near what's paid in taxes. Small fee. But these societies had everybody as a member. And you didn't need to contribute a lot. Just a token amount every year or very small incremental times because it wasn't necessary. Only the rare few people were needing the help of these societies. It's not like today where because you have just limitless, what seems like limitless amounts of help available, you can just take the help and keep getting it forever. No. It was limited in how much you could take. So you knew you had to get out there and work. And so everybody worked. And so those people who did not work were stigmatized a great deal. Those people who could and didn't, there was a big, big stigma to being a lazy, parasitic person. So people got out there and they worked their butts off because they had no option. Now, the problem with injudicious altruism is that it doesn't focus on the individual. It doesn't. It focuses on society as some form of collective. Okay? But we don't live in a collective. We are individuals. We're collectives of one. The problem with approaching things from a leftist, Marxist, collectivist point of view in terms of altruism is that you're focusing on all of society as if it's one person. So you got everybody has the capacity to get help when they need it, whether or not they're deserving or not. The leftist point of view in terms of altruism doesn't really take into account deserving. That factor doesn't play into it. You're alive, you're breathing, you're entitled to help, and of course, the people that give you the help, they shouldn't be able to look deeply into whether or not you deserve it or not. It's ridiculous. I mean, when you have a large percentage of your population receiving aid, when, if you go back 100 years, it would be less than 5% of people were receiving some form of aid, you have a big problem. Big problem. And that's the really big problem with altruism by choice and altruism by coercion. And altruism by coercion is when the state comes to you and says, give us your money in the form of taxes, and we will decide how to redistribute it. And of course, they just redistribute it to everybody, because that'll, well, make everybody like them, and then they'll get votes. So, unrestrained altruism is bad. So Ayn Rand was not against charity. She did not believe in being uncharitable. She did not believe that charity was necessarily a bad thing. What she believed was that using altruism in an injudicious way, in an unfocused way, that did not address the needs of the individual and focus on those individuals that were most deserving, meaning those individuals who were in those situations through no fault of their own, she believed that that was the best use of altruism. Okay? Now, as for selfishness, it's funny how leftists like to talk so much about how she said you should be selfish, and she thought it was good to be selfish. They like to indict her with that claim, saying that Ayn Rand was a selfish woman and she believed in selfishness. And of course, we all know selfishness is bad. That makes me laugh to hear that, because that's idiotic, of course. Selfishness is not bad, okay? And what she meant by selfishness was to act in your own best interest, not in the interest of others. Because unrestrained altruism is acting in the interest of others and not in your own interest. And of course, some people would say, well, you're selfish, but you have a husband or a wife and you're helping them. You're giving to them. They're in that. So what if you're married to someone, for example, and your husband or wife needs some help? Someone could argue, and people have argued with Ayn Rand on points like this, trying to indict her in some way on her views. They have said, well, okay, you're married, and you're helping your husband do this or that. Doesn't that go against your teachings? Well, if you're married to someone, and they need help with whatever, say they lose their job, or they want to explore a new job, or a new avocation, and you help them with that. Well, doesn't that fly against the teachings of altruism and being selfish in her school of philosophy? Well, no, because that's an altruism that helps you. You see, this is where things get dicey when you choose not to think about what you're saying. Oh, well, you're helping somebody and it's not doing, so, that totally destroys your philosophy, your teachings. No. If you're helping another person and it in turn is good for you, that's good altruism. That's selfish. That's selfish altruism. Selfish altruism is the best kind of altruism. Come on. I mean, help that helps you as well? You can't beat that. And of course, people say, oh, that's evil. That's cruel. That's horrible. You shouldn't want to get anything out of helping somebody else. Really? Why not? Why not get something out of it? That's just the practical aspect of things that people don't look at. And by the way, altruism that doesn't help you, she had no problem with. Just as long as it was your choice. If you belong to one of these mutual aid societies and they were having one of their monthly meetings and somebody said, hey, I lost my job, I need some help. And people would ask questions, and people in the audience who had some extra money, and if this person, they got cast on, like they broke their leg, their kids need food, the people who run that particular part of the society in your neighborhood would vote to help you, and then they would allocate a certain amount, and then maybe some people in the audience, when they walk by you, would say, here you go, and you can, pay me back whenever, don't worry about it, and that would be it. And then there wouldn't be any more help, but if they came back the next month and the guy is still sitting there and he's like, well, I didn't find anything, people would be far less sympathetic and might not help. And those people they gave didn't expect to get anything back. But that's a choice. So altruism can be altruism that helps you as well and is selfish in nature, and it can also be altruism that gives to others and you don't expect to get something back. But either form of altruism, be it altruism that is selfish in nature, it sounds like contradictory, I know, giving that gives to you, or altruism that was totally selfless in nature, which she was not against, are fine. What she was against was coerced altruism. Coercion. If I have my wife and she needs help, me enriching her life, making her life better, makes my life better because I love her and helping her helps me. And if I hear from a man that, of course, needs help and is deserving of it, I would like to be able to help him. And I think we all would like to be able to do so, to help those who need it, to exercise our own free will and our own ability to choose to help those in need. Because, of course, we are much better arbiters of, the efficiency that, our resources, the efficiency of allocating those resources. We're much better, at choosing how efficient those resources will be used than the government. Yet I don't have that choice because the government takes a large percentage of my money and does that for me. And does it very badly, I might add. How big is the government? The government is 1/3 of GDP. That's crazy. I mean, in America, 1/3. That's insanity. Has millions and millions of workers. How many people work for the various welfare programs in the government? And yet, really, let's think about how much of that money goes to people who need it and people who don't deserve it. The amount of waste is shocking. So I'm a better judge of who should get, and quite frankly, of course I am, because the government deals with collectives, I deal with individuals. And of course, if I'm judging who gets help on a person-by-person basis, I'm certainly going to be a much better judge at allocating resources, my own resources, than some nameless, faceless bureaucrat. Now, let's take a look at private charities. You might say, oh, well, you know, private charities exist too. It's not just the government. There are charities. They're just like those mutual aid societies, really. And we give to them, and then they decide who needs help. And so you're wrong. There's good charity, and it's good to give to those charities. It makes me feel good to give to them. Well, it might make you feel good, but you are, again, totally misunderstanding how charity and altruism work. So let's look at private charities. So, this is a relatively modern phenomenon, the charity as business. Because do not fool yourself. All private charities are first and foremost businesses. They're secondarily there to help people, but their first and primary goal is to get your money. Okay? Don't kid yourself. Even the Catholic Church, which is held up as some great charitable institution, is there to get your money. They want your money. That's it. They want your money. So, you know, let's not kid ourselves here. If you ever walk through a church and see all the white marble and gilded gold and, you know, you say, ooh, wow, boy, this looks impressive, like Donald Trump's penthouse. Boy, where'd they get all that money? They certainly weren't giving it to the poor. And the bank, the Vatican Bank in Rome, yeah, they only have $50 billion on deposit. So no, they're not hoarding any wealth. No, they're giving it all to the poor. Yeah. Private charities are no different. It might surprise some of you who are not educated in this subject to know this, but the majority of charities keep 90 or more % of what you give them. And they use that money to pay the people that work for them. Some charities go beyond the 90% to 95, 98. For a charity to be a charity, they only need to give a very small percentage of their collections, profits, to whatever you know, they're supposed to be doing, whoever they're supposed to be helping, and then the rest they get to keep. So almost all charities, 90 or more %, they keep. Less than 10%, in most cases, goes to the people in need. Think about that. Mutual aid societies of the past, nearly all of that money, it was the opposite. 10% for upkeep and whatever costs are required to keep the society going. And the 90% was put into the coffer, and it was used to help the various people that were members of that community. And these people were looking out for their own self-interest when they created these societies. And they knew that there would be more aid available for those that needed help, including them, if it had lots and lots of members. Now what you've got with these private charities, who some of you might believe took the place of these mutual aid societies, are businesses. Altruism as a cottage industry. And that is what altruism has become now, either through government monopoly or through these charitable organizations. It's become nothing more than a cottage industry. It has become a business focused around people's want and need to be altruistic. And you might say to yourself, well, oh well, you know, I'm still helping people. I pay taxes, and there are people who are getting help from my tax dollars, and I give to charity every year, and it's tax deductible, so I'm helping people then as well. Oh, well, it's just 10%, but it's still something, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. The truth is, all you're really doing is making yourself feel better, and in all actuality, you're making things worse, not better, with that kind of unrestrained altruism. Because now, instead of giving to that small group who need the help and who it would help most, and isn't it funny how those that would be helped the most and who need help, they're the ones that are going to benefit the most and who are going to contribute the most, and they're not the ones who are going to become parasites. Of course, some of them might if you give them unending help. So in essence, what you're really doing with your feel-good altruism is just giving to whoever's breathing, who says, I'm a victim, or I'm oppressed, or I need help. Give to me! Give to me! Help me! That's all you're actually doing, is you're creating an entitlement state and a parasite state where less and less people are productive because they don't need to be. If I got somebody comes to my door every day and leaves a nice cooked meal for me, I'm not going to go out and buy food. If somebody gives me money to buy food, I'm not going to go work for that money. Somebody gives me a house to live in, for God's sake, why would I get a job and earn money for rent? Why would I do any of that? And this is the problem with unrestrained altruism. It doesn't take into account the worst aspects of our nature, which, unfortunately, if you feed them, they will become dominant in most people. You cannot have unrestrained altruism. This was what Ayn Rand was against. And in terms of selfishness, she was about working in your own best self-interest. Okay? You might say, oh, well, the Bible teaches. Give me a break with the Bible, huh? It's nonsense. And by the way, the Bible itself is a socialist leftist rag that itself teaches unrestrained altruism. It's nonsense. What is this? A rich man has a better chance of getting into heaven than a camel passing through the eye of a needle or some crap like that. When I start hearing stuff like that, the thing that pops into my mind is social justice warriors, socialism, Marxism. So don't kid yourself. The Bible is as socialist as they get in that regard. It teaches a leftism as a good, just like social justice warriors do today, and it's absolutely wrong. Okay, so don't go to the Bible. It says don't be selfish, and you should basically, what was the Bible says? You should give to others. You should get more pleasure. You should want to give to others. You should be more giving to others than you should be giving to yourself. Worry about other people. Don't worry about yourself. I mean, that's socialism in a nutshell. And it's really nonsense. Because, and this is key, if every single human being on earth that was able to worried about themselves and didn't worry about other people, then everybody would be able to take care of themselves. Virtually everyone would be able to take care of themselves, and there would be no need for a welfare state, and you would just need a mutual aid society where sometimes the people who took care of themselves got into trouble through no fault of their own and needed help. Oh, wait! We already had that! Oh, geez, we already had that 100 years ago, but we decided to get rid of it in favor of a welfare state that gave money to whoever the hell needed it and said they needed it, and drug addicts and alcoholics and lazy people, and yeah, we'll just give money to everybody. We already had that. We already had that. And we decided to get rid of it, and then all of a sudden people are surprised that homelessness skyrockets, that substance abuse skyrockets, because, geez, you can afford to be a junkie when the state is flipping the bill. So, yeah, these are the things that Ayn Rand had a problem with. She didn't have a problem with, choosing to be altruistic to other people. She didn't have a problem with, geez, this poor guy, he's worked for 20 years, he's got 3 kids, and he broke his leg, and, he was laid off. He really deserves some help. Very productive person, and, he'll get back up on his feet. And the aid and the money we give him will be put to use. You're wasting money when you just give it to sloths who are going to sit around and do nothing all day, who don't deserve it, who haven't proved they deserve it. That's the biggest flaw with the welfare state, which is essentially unconstrained altruism. I'm breathing, I have a pulse, I need help, so give it to me. There is no individual judgment taking place. Everything is being done in a collective way. So injudicious altruism is what is taking place, as opposed to what works, which is judicious altruism. And that was what Ayn Rand was in favor of. Judicious altruism. In small doses. Because in large doses, it's lethal. And in terms of a society, it's lethal to that society. Okay? And we're seeing that right now. Alright? So, she had no problem with helping other people who needed help. Just don't hand out bags of money like it's Halloween and ding dong, yeah, trick or treat. Oh, but now Halloween's every day. Oh, well, okay. That's all right. No, it's not all right. So for those of you out there who are critics of Ayn Rand, who said that she was a selfish, nasty woman and she didn't care about her fellow man, wrong. The truth is, she understood how human beings are, and she cared a great deal about people. But what she didn't believe in was the feel-good politics that subjectivists do, that advocates just giving, 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 without much, if any, judiciousness taking place, without much or any investigation being done into the person who's getting it. I'm breathing, and I need help, so give me some help, yo. I mean, now in America, you've got some jurisdictions giving homeless people free houses. Not housing, but an actual house. Oh, well, you know, we looked at the numbers and it was cheaper to just give them a house. It was costing more in municipal services. So we'll just give them a house and it saves us money. Why don't you just tell people, go ahead and be homeless and we'll give you a house? I mean, this is incentivization, okay? You're homeless and you get a house. Come on. Really? Now, some of those people might be homeless through no fault of their own, but a large majority of them are not, and are homeless because of their own fault. And I'm not talking about war veterans who need help. And by the way, if we were to, backtrack 100 years, these type of people would have gotten help when they needed it from their community, mutual aid organizations, and they wouldn't have ended up homeless to begin with. So another problem you end up with this injudicious altruism is it's inefficient. It's inefficient. And the people who need the most help, the people who need the most help, are oftentimes those who deserve it, who ended up in that situation through no fault of their own. People who have been to war and who have been traumatized and have PTSD and who are just psychologically a mess. And because of how inefficient the system is, these people don't get the help they need, and then they end up homeless. And then, of course, it burdens the system even more, because now you're dealing with a homeless person, and they need even more help than someone who wasn't homeless, because they deteriorated so much because they didn't get the help they needed. I mean, this is what happens when you try to treat everyone as the same, and you give out help to just everybody, instead of just those who need that help. You end up with a very inefficient system. And then what you end up doing is creating even more people who need help. So again, it creates this cottage industry. So yeah, the government loves this, of course, because it creates more parasites, more people that need help. Hence the government has to get bigger to service this huge, ever-growing group of people who need help. And meanwhile, sprinkled throughout this large group of people that need help are little tiny dots, little segments, actual individuals who needed the help the most and who deserved it. and aren't parasites. And then you have the vast majority who really could take care of themselves if they had the incentive to do so, but they don't. So, in summary, injudicious altruism creates parasites. Judicious altruism keeps them on the fringes of society and stigmatizes being a parasite. And this is another problem with injudicious altruism that is practiced by private charities and the welfare state administered by the government. You take away the stigma of being a parasite because it becomes so commonplace. If you make it into an acceptable thing to be a parasite and there's no more stigma, you see what you see now. You know, huge percentages of the society on welfare, getting food stamps, getting aid for whatever reason. People coming from foreign countries and squatting and then getting money from us. This is what you see. And it forces the government to grow because it goes, oh, well, we got more people that need help. We need to be bigger to help them. And that's why government they love injudicious altruism. It gives them an excuse to take more of your money. And to administer that money, they need more government employees, so they get bigger and bigger and bigger. You know, government loves to get bigger. They love to take more of your money. So for those of you out there who have railed against Ayn Rand and said that she was a selfish, nasty woman who only cared about herself, she cared about people. She wasn't all about herself. She really, really cared about everyone. She understood that people acting in their own self-interest will do what is best for them. And of course, what's best for everybody is to go out, be productive, feed yourself, clothe yourself, take care of your family, make sure you have a roof over your head. And she understood that if you do this for people, injudiciously, en masse, they are going to just become accustomed to that, and then that's going to be the new normal, which has unfortunately become the case. So, from my own point of view, altruism in and of itself is not an evil thing. And that wasn't what Ayn Rand was teaching, and that was not what her many detractors who like to point that out, who like to say that is not what she actually taught. She simply believed that altruism, like anything, should be used in a judicious way, with people choosing how and when they are altruistic, and to whom they will direct their altruism to. She didn't believe in giving, throw money everywhere and just, somebody who needs help is going to get it. And then the rest who are just parasites, and it's just enabling them to continue to be parasites. I feel good that I gave, so, somebody somewhere got some help. So that's the real problem with injudicious altruism. It creates a lot of parasites, and most of that money gets wasted on people who could very well take care of themselves if they had the incentive to do so. But since they're being given free stuff all the time, they don't need to. While the person who actually needed the help doesn't get it, and then they also fall into the pit of people who are sucking off the government teat. It just creates a problem. It adds to the problem. It creates an industry of altruism, which is poisonous to a society in large doses. And keep this in mind the next time you want to be altruistic and put $1 into that cup of that dude sitting on the corner sucking down his Thunderbird. Think about that the next time you put money in the cup of some guy that, looks like he's strung out and he's high as a kite. Think about that. This money is going to where it's not going to do any good. Helping people who can help themselves and who are in situations that they got in through their own goddamn fault doesn't do any good. It might make you feel better, but it's just a real and total waste of your money when that money instead could be going to people who actually need help would produce, would contribute to society and make society a better place. All you're really doing when you give money, well, you're not giving, when the government takes your money through coercion, is essentially enabling people to continue to be parasites. And that helps no one. You only help people when altruism is judiciously given. It's that simple. And Ayn Rand understood that, and that's what she tried to teach to people. And unfortunately, many people have just done a surface reading and either misunderstood or misrepresent her dishonestly because her teachings fly in the face of their preconceived worldview. But what she tried to teach was that, life is wonderful. People, in the vast majority, are able to take care of themselves, and there's nothing wrong with helping other people so long as they are people who need help. Because that dog, if you feed him, he's just going to come back again for a meal instead of go out hunting for his own food. And that kind of simple logic, you would think would be obvious to most people, but unfortunately not. Hence my need to make this video. So, for those of you out there who are detractors of Ayn Rand, maybe now you understand a little bit more about what she meant when she said that she doesn't believe in altruism and charity. What she meant was she doesn't believe in unrestrained altruism and unrestrained charity. And that's what she was talking about. I wish you all well and a wonderful day. This is the Practical Philosopher signing out.